Earvin Magic Johnson is widely regarded historically as one of the NBA's best ever and was at his peak in his powers from 1980 to 1990. With 5 rings, 3 MVP trophies, and 3 Finals MVPs in that decade, he is and will always be considered one of the most prolific players in that era. While the Showtime Lakers are also considered one of the greatest teams ever, he is also credited for helping to save the NBA from a dip in television ratings and the down era in general for the league. His rivalry with Larry Bird and the Boston Celtics during the 80s regenerated interest on the league and helped push the NBA to where it is today. But all that changed in the fall of 1991. The Lakers were still clinging on to the Showtime era and made a run to the finals the previous season before losing to MJ and the Bulls in 5 games. Magic had just turned 32, entering his 13th season, and was just 1 year removed from being named the league's most valuable player. He averaged 19.4 points and 12.5 assists in 90-91 and showed little of no signs of decline. However, then came the shocking announcement that devastated the NBA, stopped Johnson's career, and sent the Lakers into a spiral that took them several years to recover from. Right before the 91-92 season began, Magic made his famous announcement that he was forced to retire because he contracted the HIV virus.
The HIV virus that I have attained, I will have to retire from the Lakers.
He did play in the All-Star game that season and won a gold medal with the Dream Team in the 92 Olympics. Magic wanted to return to the NBA for 92-93 season but called off right to the comeback before the season went to begin, citing various controversies as the reason. Quote, "It has become obvious that the various controversies surrounding my return are taking away from both basketball as a sport and the larger issue of living with HIV for me and the many people affected. After much thought and talking it over with Cookie and my family, I decided I would retire for good from the Lakers." He went on to coach the Lakers for 16 games at the end of the 93-94 season, but that was just as forgettable as his ill-advised talk show called The Magic Hour. Towards the end of the 95-96 season, Magic shocked the world again, this time by making a comeback. And he showed his skill when, in his first NBA game in 5 years, he nearly recorded a triple-double off the bench with 19 points, 10 assists, and 8 rebounds against the Golden State Warriors. 2 weeks later, Johnson recorded his 138th and final triple-double of his career with 15 points, 10 boards, and 13 assists against the Hawks. He still had it. He played 32 games at power forward for the Lakers and showed that he still had plenty of gas left, averaging 14.6 points, 6.9 assists, and 5.7 boards. He also finished that season with a better player efficiency rating, 21.1, than Scottie Pippen at 21 and Patrick Ewing at 20.9. The Lakers finished the season with a 53-29 record, good for 4th in the Western Conference. Magic even garnered a few MVP votes, finishing 12th in the balloting. Although they were facing the defending NBA champion Houston Rockets, the Lakers had home court advantage in the 5-game series. The Lakers played poorly in a Game 1 loss, prompting Johnson to express frustration with his role in Coach Del Harris' offense. Then, Magic led the way in Game 2 with a 26-point and averaged 7.5 points per game in the remainder of the series, which Rockets won in 3-1. With the success experienced by both the team and Johnson himself, he considered the comeback a success. While he thought of returning for 1 more year, Magic ultimately decided to hang up his shoes for good. "I was satisfied with my return to the NBA, although I would have hoped we would have gone further into the playoffs," he said in a statement, "but now I'm ready to give it up. It's time to move on. I'm going out on my terms, something I couldn't say when I aborted a comeback in 1992. Magic has gone on to achieve immense success off the court. With unparalleled business savvy and acumen, Magic eventually rose to the rank of a billionaire, which is no small task in the recent economy. While basketball fans might argue that Jordan is still regarded as the undisputed greatest of all time, Magic rank on the list if his career hadn't ended prematurely. Jordan still be considered the greatest. Mike had 6 titles, Magic had 5. Mike's last title came when he was 34. Magic was already out of championship contention when he was 31. How many more titles was he going to win? His Lakers team wasn't the greatest at that time, but so what? It was still Magic Johnson and made average players good and good players great. And if Magic won another, Michael didn't have the most titles in his generation, the debate about best ever might rage much stronger than it does today. The question is, what if Magic never contracted HIV and kept playing well into his prime? I think the first thing y'all should grasp is realizes that Magic still had plenty left in the tank. The Lakers may have lost in the 91 finals, but Magic had been a first-team All-NBA selection in the regular season. And though maybe in 1991 he wouldn't really know exactly how HIV might have affected Magic physically, mentally, or emotionally going forward, but his comeback in 1996 at age 36, 14.6 points, 5.7 rebounds, 6.9 assists in 32 games, suggests that a 32-year-old Magic Johnson could have continued playing at a high level in 1992. The Lakers couldn't crater without him. Not right away at least. They won 43 games in 92 despite replacing Magic with a solid starting point guard but not a superstar Sedale threat. While there's no reason to think the Lakers would have been a threat to the 92 Bulls, it's reasonable to think that Magic would have made a Western Conference contender out of him. Yet again, probably not better on paper than the Trailblazers or Jazz, but able to give them a run in a 7-game series. It would have been safe to say that Magic could have averaged Johnson a semi-productive stat line of a huge 19 points, 11.5 assists, and 6.5 boards and still remain in MVP contention. And with veterans James Worthy, AC Green, Brian Scott, Cliff Robinson, and Sam Perkins, and blossoming big man Vlade Divac by his side, the Lakers appeared to have enough to make a trip to the finals even, but we doubt that all that would have been enough to dampen the rampaging Bulls from claiming a second straight championship. If we're looking at the Lakers' title chances over the next few years, you have to consider the competition, the 92, 93, and 96 Bulls, and the 94-95 Rockets. Magic alone isn't making the Lakers contenders to knock off most of those teams, probably not any, but it's fun to consider what the Lakers might have been able to put around him to chase a championship. Charles Barkley has talked about his 1992 near trade to the Lakers, a deal he says the Sixers agreed to and then retracted. It was going crazy for 2 weeks, so I knew it would come down to Portland, the Lakers, or Phoenix. So I get a call from my agent one morning and he said, "Philly has traded you to the Lakers." So I went to lunch and started drinking. I'm effing so excited that I'm going to the Lakers. 3 hours later, I get an effing call from my agent saying the Sixers were backed out of the deal. I said, "Oh, I'm feeling pretty good now," so I went out and played that night. Yeah, that sounds just like Chuck. According to a story from that time period, the deal was something like Barkley and Ron Anderson for James Worthy and Eldon Campbell. Chuck eventually got dealt to Phoenix for Jeff Hornacek, Andrew Lang, and Tim Perry. Worthy only had 2 more seasons left in him, and Philly flipped Hornacek and Jeff Malone after a year, so it ended up being mostly a wash for the Sixers. But what if Magic Johnson had been sitting for a season and opted to come out of retirement? Are the Lakers incentivized to make a better deal to get Barkley in the summer of 92 if Magic is on the roster? Even with Father Time slowly catching up to Magic, we reckon he would still average about 19 points, 11 assists, and 7 boards during the season. And had the deal for Barkley gone through, the Lakers would have had a formidable roster that still had Worthy, Scott, Perkins, Divac, Green, and sharpshooter Anthony Peeler. The roster would have been pretty fearsome in 1993. The 1994 season, as wide open as it was with Jordan opt out to play baseball, saw the Lakers steadily rebuild. With many of the veterans, including Byron Scott and AC Green, gone from the team gave the keys to young guns led by Divac and left-handed rookie from Cincinnati, Nick Van Exel. Also gaining a prominent role on that team was budding big man Eldon Campbell. And Magic would clearly lost a step and a half. He would still average a lean 15, 9, and 6. However, with the Lakers going with the youth and the title contention no longer in sight, Magic would surely have made this his swan song, retiring at his season end. In hindsight, had Magic not contracted the virus, Lakers would have improved in the early mid-90s, but his legacy doesn't really need to improve. Jordan, on the other hand, still remains the GOAT, but the Magic Lakers at that time really had enough to topple with the Bulls. One aspect of Magic's early retirement that has always been compelling is how it jump-started his life and influence away from the game. He'd already dipped his toe into the business world when he invested in 2 Colorado radio stations back in 1981. In 1987, he founded Magic Johnson Enterprises, and by the time the 91 finals came, he began the process of taking his Magic's 32 retail stores nationwide. But the biggest steps came upon retirement, which were both massively successful and uniquely targeted. Magic specifically built his restaurants, movie theaters, and coffee shops in undeserved areas of Los Angeles, otherwise ignored by developers in LA and the surrounding areas. At the time, this was considered insane, but Magic's bank account quickly proved otherwise. Magic played uninterrupted through 96. At minimum, the breadth of the work in those communities gets delayed, along with the benefits. In a weird, perverse way, people of color in certain areas around LA were better served by Magic having to retire, and the ripple effect started much faster. If there's any silver lining to this career being cut short, this may be it. Now, I appreciate the view. Go ahead and smash the thumbs up, comment, subscribe if you're new. Thank you for watching.